Blood dripped from the control panel onto Iris Wade's boots. She pressed her hand against Yuki's wound, but there was too much damage. The plasma burns had cooked through her assistant's chest, leaving blackened flesh that no medical kit could repair. "They're coming for you," Yuki whispered through cracked lips. Her dark eyes struggled to focus. 4 hunters, 10 of them. They want live human specimens. "Save your strength," Iris said, though she knew it was pointless. The research station's med bay was 3 kilometers away, and the transport vehicle was nothing but melted slag outside. No time. Yuki coughed and pink foam bubbled at her mouth. "They burn colonies. Take trophies. 17 human settlements. Thousands dead." Her fingers gripped Iris's arm with surprising strength. "Run, hide, fight, don't let them take you." The grip loosened. Yuki's chest stopped moving. Iris sat there for 10 seconds, maybe 20. Her mind felt empty and full at the same time. Then she heard it. The distinctive whine of atmospheric entry vehicles cutting through Taros Thurfor's thick air. 3 ships coming in fast from the north. She stood up, legs shaking. Her hands moved on autopilot, grabbing her field pack and stuffing it with survival gear. Water purifier, nutrient bars, sample collection tools, a basic medical kit. The plasma cutter she used for geological surveys. Not much, but it would have to do. The research station had been her home for 8 months. She knew every corner, every piece of equipment, every system. More importantly, she knew the forest outside. The crimson trees that grew 50 meters tall, the razor wasps that nested in the canopy, the burrowing predators that hunted by vibration. She had cataloged hundreds of species, learned their behaviors, understood the ecosystem in ways that took years of careful study. These hunters would have basic information about Taros 4. Maybe they'd scanned from orbit, read the preliminary reports. But they wouldn't know what she knew. They couldn't. Iris looked at Yuki one last time. Her friend deserved a proper burial, but there was no time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Then she ran. The forest swallowed her within minutes, red bark rough against her palms as she climbed over fallen logs, blue moss soft under her feet, muffling her footsteps. The air tasted of copper and something sweet, like honey mixed with metal. Home. Or at least it had been. Behind her, the research station exploded. The shockwave knocked her forward into a thorn bush. Pain lanced across her arms and face as dozens of tiny cuts opened up. She bit back a scream and kept moving. Through gaps in the canopy, she saw 3 figures emerge from the smoke. The first was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with gray skin like stone and 4 arms that ended in claws. The second moved like liquid, serpentine and quick, with scales that shifted color to match the environment. The third looked almost human, but too perfect, with muscles that bulged unnaturally and eyes that glowed orange in the dim forest light. They spread out immediately, professional and coordinated. The big one, the 4-armed giant, headed straight for the forest edge. Straight toward her trail, Iris forced herself to breathe slowly. Panic would kill her faster than any hunter. She'd done hostile environment training on 3 different worlds. She'd survived equipment failures, toxic atmospheres, and predator attacks. This was just another survival situation. Just another problem to solve, except this time the predators were intelligent. They had weapons. They had technology. They had killed thousands of humans before her. She moved deeper into the forest, careful to step on bare rock where possible, avoiding the soft soil that would hold footprints. The 4-armed hunter was tracking her. She could hear him crashing through the undergrowth with the confidence of something that had never been prey. Stupid. Overconfident. Good. Iris knew these forests. She knew that 2 kilometers ahead there was a ravine cut by ancient water flows, narrow at the top, wide at the bottom, with walls of loose shale that would collapse if disturbed. She'd almost fallen into it herself during her first month here, had mapped it carefully to avoid future accidents. Now she ran toward it on purpose. The hunter behind her was getting closer. She could hear his breathing, deep and rhythmic like a machine. He wasn't even trying to be quiet anymore. Why would he? He was a Tulvarian warrior, she would learn later. Elite hunters who had never lost prey once they caught the scent. Iris reached the ravine and jumped across without slowing. 2 meters of empty air, then solid ground. She hit hard, rolled, came up running. Behind her, she heard a roar of triumph as the hunter saw her leap. He was so focused on his prey that he didn't notice the research drone lying in the moss. Iris had placed it there 10 minutes ago, while he was busy tracking her earlier trail. She'd set it to full power, all batteries dumping into the gravity manipulators at once. The hunter stepped on it. The device screamed and died, but not before creating a localized gravity spike that cracked the ravine edge like an eggshell. Tons of rock and soil began to slide. The hunter realized his mistake too late. He tried to jump back, but his weight had already shifted forward. The ground vanished beneath him. He fell roaring into the ravine. The walls collapsed inward, burying him under a mountain of loose stone. Silence settled over the forest. Iris waited, every muscle tense, ready to run if the hunter emerged. 1 minute, 2, 5. Nothing moved in the ravine except settling dust. She climbed down carefully, using roots and stable rocks. It took 20 minutes to find him. He was dead, crushed under a boulder that probably weighed as much as a small transport. One of his arms stuck out from the rubble, still gripping his weapon, a ceremonial blade made from bone, nearly as long as Iris was tall, with strange symbols carved into the surface. She worked it free from his dead fingers. The blade was surprisingly light, perfectly balanced, a warrior's weapon, a trophy. Iris climbed back out of the ravine and started moving again. The other 2 hunters would have heard the collapse. They'd come to investigate. She needed to be far away when they arrived. But first she made a small cairn of stones at the ravine's edge. Not for the hunter. For Yuki. For the thousands of humans these monsters had killed. For every person who would never get justice if she failed here. The hunt had begun, but the prey had sharp teeth too, and she was just getting started. 3 days in the Red Forest had changed Iris Wade in ways she hadn't expected. Her hands no longer shook when she touched the bone blade. Her ears had learned to filter the constant noise of Terosfee's ecosystem, picking out the sounds that mattered from the ones that didn't. Her body moved with a different kind of awareness, like an animal that knows it's being stalked. Because she was being stalked. 2 more hunters had joined the serpentine one she'd spotted at the research station. She'd caught glimpses of them through the canopy. One had wings, leathery and broad, with a body covered in blue feathers. The other was smaller, insectoid, with too many legs and compound eyes that reflected light like jewels. They were tracking her, but slowly, carefully. The death of their companion had taught them something. Humans were not easy prey. Iris moved through a grove of crystal trees, so named because their bark grew in translucent layers that caught and reflected the light. Beautiful but also useful. The trees grew in spiral patterns, creating natural mazes that confused visual tracking. She'd studied them extensively, mapping the safe paths through the groves and marking the dangerous ones. The dangerous ones led to razor wasp nests. She'd discovered the wasps during her second week on Taros 4. Each one was the size of her thumb, with stingers that could punch through standard body armor. They communicated through pheromones and protected their territory with suicidal aggression. Individually, they were a nuisance. In swarms of thousands, they were death. Iris had spent weeks learning their pheromone language. She'd collected samples, analyzed them, synthesized basic communication compounds. It was supposed to be for her research paper on chemical communication in insect colonies. Now it was going to be a weapon. She found a good spot near the largest nest she'd mapped, a clearing where the crystal trees grew close together, creating a natural amphitheater with limited escape routes. Then she climbed into the canopy and waited. The insectoid hunter found her first. Of course it did. Its species, the Chitrax, were famous for their tracking abilities. They could see in infrared, ultraviolet, and about 6 other spectrums that humans couldn't even imagine. This one was probably expensive, probably elite. It also probably thought it was invisible as it crawled along the tree branches toward her position. Its carapace shifted colors to match the bark, a near-perfect camouflage. But Iris had smeared herself with mud and moss 3 hours ago, masking her heat signature and visual profile. She wasn't where the hunter expected her to be. She was 10 meters to the left, downwind, completely still. The Chitrax reached the spot where her scent trail ended. Its antennae twitched in confusion. Mandibles clicked together in what might have been the Chitrax version of cursing. Iris threw the pheromone bomb. It was crude, just a sealed sample container filled with synthesized aggression markers and alarm signals, mixed with a compound that meant enemy here, in razor wasp chemical language. The container shattered against a tree trunk right above the largest nest. For 3 seconds, Nothing happened. Then the forest exploded with buzzing. Thousands of wasps erupted from hidden nests in every direction. They flew in a coordinated swarm, responding to the chemical scream that said their home was under attack. The Chitrax hunter realized its mistake immediately, but by then it was too late. The swarm hit it like a living wave. The hunter's carapace protected it at first, but the wasps found the joints, the gaps, the soft tissues around the eyes and mouth. It fell from the tree trying to run, but the swarm followed. Every movement attracted more wasps. Every wound released blood that drove them into a greater frenzy. Iris watched from her hiding spot. A cloth soaked in neutralizing pheromones wrapped around her face. The wasps ignored her completely, too focused on the thrashing hunter below. It took the Chitrax 5 minutes to die. Long, terrible minutes filled with sounds that Iris knew would haunt her dreams. But she didn't look away. Couldn't look away. This was what justice looked like. Ugly, brutal, necessary. When the swarm finally dispersed, she climbed down and approached the body carefully. The hunter's equipment was mostly ruined, melted by wasp venom or destroyed in the death throes, but its neural whip was intact, a weapon that could paralyze with a touch. She took it along with a combat knife that looked like it had never been used. 2 down, 8 to go. The winged hunter found her at sunset. She'd been expecting it. Predators that hunted from the air always attacked at dawn or dusk, when the light played tricks with depth perception. This one was a Skrell, she knew from her brief glimpse. They were supposed to be honorable warriors, fighting with grace and dignity. This one dove at her like a missile, claws extended, screaming a war cry that echoed through the forest. Iris had prepared for this too. She'd spent the afternoon hunting a crown predator, one of the apex species of Taros 4. A flying lizard the size of a small ship, with territorial instincts that made the razor wasps look friendly. She'd found its territory markers, the scent glands it used to warn others away. Now she was covered in that scent. She smelled like death to every flying creature on this planet. The Skrell hunter realized something was wrong when every bird, bat, and insect in the area suddenly fled in panic. It tried to abort its dive, wings flaring to break, but momentum carried it forward. The crown predator hit it from above, 4 tons of scaled fury, enraged that something had invaded its territory. The Skrell never had a chance. Hunter and predator tumbled from the sky together, crashing through branches locked in combat. Iris didn't wait to see who won. She ran, counting seconds in her head. At 30 seconds, she heard the Skrell's death scream. At 45 seconds, the crown predator roared in victory and flew away carrying its prize. She circled back 2 hours later after full dark. The Skrell's body lay broken at the base of a crystal tree, one wing torn completely off. The crown predator had eaten its fill and left the rest. Iris took the neural whip from the Skrell's belt, took its communication device, took its ceremonial blade, smaller than the Tulvarian's but just as sharp. Then she did something new. She took the skulls. It took hours with her plasma cutter, careful work in the darkness. But when she was done, she had 3 clean skulls, alien and strange, proof of her kills. She mounted them on pikes made from crystal tree branches, arranging them at the forest edge where the remaining hunters would find them. And she left a message, recorded on the Skrell's own communication device, broadcast on frequencies she knew the hunters monitored. "Come find me," she said in Galactic Standard, pronouncing each word carefully. "Come find what happens to predators who hunt humans. Come learn why Earth doesn't forget. Come die." She walked away into the darkness, leaving the skulls behind like a promise, like a threat, like a declaration of war. The scientist was gone. The warrior remained, and the hunt had only just begun. News traveled fast in the mercenary networks. 3 dead hunters from the Voron hunting circle meant something significant, especially when they'd been killed by a single human scientist. In dive bars across 20 systems, conversations stopped when the footage appeared. 3 alien skulls mounted on pikes, a human voice delivering a challenge that sounded more like a death sentence. The remaining 5 hunters gathered in their ship, orbiting high above Taros 4. Rena, a Volthene gunslinger with more cybernetic parts than organic ones, paced the cargo bay like a caged animal. Her optical implants flickered red with anger. "This is an insult," she hissed, her voice modulated by vocal enhancers. A human. A single, soft, weak human. Crix, the Mindari psychic, sat perfectly still in meditation pose. Its translucent skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that reflected its thoughts. The human is not weak. She understands the terrain. She uses it as a weapon. Then we burn the terrain, Horvath rumbled. The Grenlock heavy weapons specialist checked his plasma cannons with mechanical precision. Each weapon was nearly as large as Iris herself. Turn the forest to ash. She has nowhere to hide in a wasteland. No. The voice came from Krushan, the Voron Alpha who led the hunting circle. He was tall even for his species, with silver fur marked by ritual scars. His eyes held the confidence of someone who had never failed. We do not burn. We do not destroy from orbit. That is not the hunt. The hunt? Rena laughed, bitter and sharp. 3 of our pack are dead. This stopped being sport when Grask fell into that ravine. Selt, the Yashiri Blademaster, spoke for the first time. His species valued silence, speaking only when words had weight. She honors combat. She takes trophies as we do. She understands the way of the warrior. She's prey, Rena snapped. She was prey, Selt corrected. Now she is something else. Krushan studied the tactical display, showing Tarosaphor's surface mapped in detail. Red markers indicated where each hunter had died. A pattern was emerging. The human was leading them, drawing them into terrain she controlled. Classic predator behavior. We changed tactics, he decided. No more solo tracking. We move as a pack. Coordinate our approach. Rena, you will draw her out. Your speed and firepower will force her to flee. Crix will track her psychically. Horvath will establish kill zones with overlapping fields of fire. Selt and I will close the trap. And if she doesn't run? Crix asked, its mental voice rippling through their minds like cold water. Then she dies fighting, Krushan said simply. Either way, this ends. Far below in the Red Forest, Iris Wade had already hacked their communication network. The Skrell's equipment included military-grade decryption software. It had taken her 2 days, but she'd broken their basic tactical channel. Now she listened to every word, learning their plan, understanding their psychology. They thought coordination was the answer. They thought overwhelming force would win. They were thinking like hunters attacking prey. But Iris wasn't prey anymore. She was something these hunters had never encountered. A human who fought not for sport or glory, but for justice. For revenge. For the 17 colonies these monsters had burned. For Yuki and thousands like her. She'd been busy while they planned. The abandoned mining facility 3 valleys over had been stripped of everything valuable years ago. But the infrastructure remained. Geothermal power taps, connected to a network of pipes and turbines that reached deep into Tarosfree's unstable crust. Dangerous to operate, which was why the mine had closed. Perfect for someone willing to take risks. Iris had spent 40 hours straight rewiring the system. Her hands bled from cuts and burns. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep. But now the entire facility was a bomb waiting for a trigger, not explosive thermal, the kind of heat that turned rock to lava, metal to vapor, flesh to ash, and she'd left breadcrumbs. Medical supply caches that showed up on basic scans, signs of habitation in the main complex, even a false heat signature that looked like someone trying to hide. She watched from 2 kilometers away, perched in the canopy of the tallest tree she could climb, as the hunters took the bait. They approached the facility at dawn, moving with military precision. Horvath set up his plasma cannons at every entrance, massive weapons that could cut through reinforced steel. Crix extended its psychic senses, searching for her mind among the rocks and metal. Selt moved through shadows, blade ready, every step perfect and controlled. Rena came last, her cybernetic legs carrying her in long, loping strides. She held a rifle that probably cost more than the entire mining facility, sensors and targeting systems linked directly to her neural implants. Iris waited until they were all in position, until Horvath test-fired one of his cannons, the vibration sending a shockwave through the ground. Until that shockwave reached the modified seismic sensor she'd buried at the facility's geothermal tap. The explosion came from below. Superheated steam and gas under pressure for years, suddenly released through every pipe and vent. The facility didn't just explode. It became a volcano, a column of fire that reached into the sky, visible from orbit. Horvath died instantly, vaporized along with his precious cannons. Crix's psychic scream echoed across dimensions as its body burned. A death cry that every sensitive species within 3 light years would feel. Selt was faster, already moving when the first tremor hit. He almost made it out. Almost. A secondary explosion caught him, burning half his body, sending him tumbling into the rocks. Rena's cybernetics saved her. Her legs absorbed the shockwave. Her armor protected her from the initial heat blast. She ran faster than anything organic could move, clearing 200 meters in seconds, but not fast enough to escape the avalanche of superheated rock that followed the explosion. She went down hard, buried under tons of debris. When the shaking stopped, one arm stuck out from the rubble, still clutching her rifle. The cybernetic hand slowly closed into a fist, then opened, then stopped moving. Iris climbed down from her tree and walked toward the devastation. The heat was incredible, waves of it that made the air shimmer. She wrapped wet cloth around her face and hands, protected her eyes with salvaged goggles. Horvath was gone. Nothing left but melted metal. Crix was a blackened shape that might have been organic once. She found Rena's skull intact inside the cracked remains of her helmet, the cybernetic implants still glowing faintly. Then she heard coughing. Selt lay 50 meters from the blast center, half his body burned, his blade still gripped in one hand. He was alive, barely. Iris approached carefully, the bone blade from Grask ready, but Selt made no move to attack. He couldn't. His legs were ruined, his arm hung at a wrong angle. "You fight well," he whispered in Galactic Standard. His species accent turned the words musical despite the pain. "With honor." "This isn't about honor," Iris said. "Your pack burned 17 colonies, killed thousands. This is about justice," Selt coughed, blood on his lips. "Then deliver it." They looked at each other for a long moment. Warrior to warrior, Iris thought about mercy, about being better than these hunters. Then she thought about Yuki dying in her arms, about families torn apart, about children who never got to grow up. "You want a warrior's death," she said. "Fine," she raised the blade. Selt raised his own, the movement costing him everything. They met in the middle, steel on bone, one strike, it was over quickly. Selt fell with his blade in his hand, facing his enemy. Whatever else could be said about him, he died with courage. Iris took his skull, took his blade, a masterwork weapon worth more than a small ship. Then she activated the long-range transmitter she'd salvaged from the facility's communication array. She broadcast to the Galactic Council, to human space, to every frequency she could access. The footage showed 4 new skulls arranged in a pyramid. Behind them, the burning facility. Behind that, the red forest of Taros IV. "The Voron hunting circle has operated in the shadows for decades," Iris said to the camera. "They've killed thousands. They've taken trophies from 17 human colonies. They thought we were prey. They thought we were weak." She lifted Selt's blade, the metal catching the light from the burning facility. 5 hunters came for me. 5 hunters learned the truth. Humans are not prey. We are not weak. We are patient and we are thorough and we never ever forget. She paused, looking directly into the camera, looking at the one remaining hunter, the Alpha, the leader who watched from orbit. "One left," she said softly. "Come down here. Finish what you started, or spend the rest of your life knowing you failed." The transmission ended. The galaxy watched. And high above, in his ship, Crucian the Voron Alpha began to descend. Crucian watched the transmission 3 times before he made his decision. Each viewing showed him something new. The way the human moved, economical and precise. The way she held the blade, comfortable with the weapon despite obvious inexperience. The way her eyes tracked the camera, calculating, cold. This was not the scientist who had arrived on Taros 4 8 months ago. That person was dead, killed by necessity and violence. What remained was something his species understood very well. A warrior forged by survival, tempered by loss, sharpened by purpose. He respected that, feared it a little, though he would never admit it to anyone. In 300 years of hunting, across 100 worlds, he had never seen prey become predator so completely. Humans were supposed to be soft, dependent on technology, weak without their machines. This human had killed 9 elite hunters with improvised weapons and knowledge of the terrain. She had turned a research station into a graveyard and a forest into a killing ground. She had done what should have been impossible, which meant everything he knew about humans was wrong, or incomplete, or dangerously outdated. He set his ship to standby mode and powered down the engines. He would not need it again. Either he would kill this human and take her skull as the ultimate trophy, or he would die on Taros IV and his legacy would end in failure. There was no middle ground, no retreat, no option for negotiation. His species did not retreat. They did not fail. They hunted until the prey was dead or they were. Crucian descended in a drop pod, landing 10 kilometers from the research station where everything had started. He came armed with everything his culture valued: A plasma rifle with enough ammunition to level a building. A ceremonial blade passed down through 12 generations of alphas. Armor that had turned aside bullets, blades, and energy weapons on 50 worlds. Sensors that could track body heat through solid rock. He also came with something else. Doubt. Small, nagging, unwelcome. It whispered in his mind as he tracked through the red forest. What if she's better? What if humans are more dangerous than we believed? What if I die here alone on this backwater world? He silenced the doubts. Doubt was poison for a warrior. Doubt made you slow, made you second guess, made you dead. The forest was quiet as he moved. Too quiet. Animals that should have been calling to each other were silent. Birds that should have filled the canopy were absent. Even the insects seemed muted, as if the entire ecosystem was holding its breath. She was close. He could feel it. Then he heard his own voice. It came from multiple directions at once, broadcast through speakers hidden in the trees. His voice, recorded from the ship's communication logs, played back at him. But not normal communication. These were his private logs. His thoughts. His doubts. The human killed Grask with a simple trap. A warrior with 3 centuries of experience. Defeated by a scientist with weeks of preparation. How is that possible? His own voice, contemplative and concerned. Rena was unstable, but she was fast. Enhanced. Optimized. She should have caught the human easily. Instead, she died buried under rocks. What does that say about our assumptions? Another speaker, different direction. Selt died with honor. But he died. A blade master, perhaps the finest warrior I have known. And he fell to a human who learned to fight in a month. She is adapting faster than we can adjust. Krushan's jaw tightened. Psychological warfare. Clever. Use his own words, his own doubts to weaken his resolve. It might have worked on a lesser warrior, but he was not lesser. He was alpha. He was perfect. He shot the speakers, precise bursts that silenced his recorded voice. Then he kept moving, senses on high alert. She was playing games, trying to get into his head. It wouldn't work. The next attack was more direct. Tripwires connected to signal flares, military grade, salvaged from Rena's equipment. They went off in sequence, each one bright enough to overload his optical sensors temporarily. He stumbled half-blind and almost missed the pit trap. Almost. His sensors caught the disturbance in the ground, the slight depression that indicated disturbed soil. He leaped over it and kept running, eyes adjusting, anger building. You'll have to do better, he growled into his communicator, broadcasting on all frequencies. Her reply came immediately. I am doing better. You just haven't realized it yet. He spun, trying to locate her signal, but it bounced off crystal trees, reflected through the forest in a dozen directions. She could be anywhere. Face me, he demanded. Face me with honor, warrior to warrior, like you faced those 17 colonies? Her voice was cold, factual. Did you give them honor? Did you fight the children warrior to warrior? The civilians? The researchers? They were prey. Prey does not receive honor. Then neither do you. The attack came from above. A net, weighted with rocks, dropped from the canopy. Krushan cut through it with his blade, but the distraction cost him a second. A second was enough. The neural whip caught him across the back, stolen from the Skrell hunter. Electricity surged through his armor, bypassing most of his defenses, locking his muscles in spasm. He fell paralyzed, gasping. Iris Wade dropped from the trees and landed 3 meters away. She looked terrible. Thin, scarred, covered in dirt and dried blood. Her clothes were more patches than original fabric. One eye was swollen half shut from some recent injury, but she stood straight and her hands were steady as she held the neural whip and the bone blade. You should be dead, Krushan forced out through paralyzed lips. Exposed, injured, alone, you should be dead. I am dead, Iris said quietly. The person I was died when Yuki did. What I am now is what you made me. A weapon, a hunter, a killer. The paralysis was fading, his enhanced physiology fighting off the neural shock. Another 30 seconds and he'd be mobile again. He just needed to keep her talking. You cannot win, he said. I am enhanced, trained, superior. Maybe. Iris circled him slowly, staying out of reach. But I know this forest. I know every path, every danger, every creature. You're in my world now. My rules. There are no rules in hunting. Exactly. She pressed a device she'd been holding in her other hand. Somewhere in the forest, something beeped 3 times. Krushan felt the ground tremble, Then he smelled it. Smoke, fire, coming from multiple directions. You're burning the forest? He couldn't keep the shock from his voice. You would destroy your own advantage. Not destroy, control. Iris pointed to the north where smoke was beginning to rise. Those fires will drive every predator in this region toward this location. The big ones, the dangerous ones, the ones that see a wounded warrior and smell opportunity. You'll die too. Maybe, she agreed, but I know how to hide from them. I know their behaviors, their territories, their feeding patterns. Do you? Crucian tried to stand and managed to get to his knees. Feeling was returning to his limbs, but too slowly. The first animal call echoed through the forest. Deep, resonant, hungry. This is not honor, he growled. No, Iris agreed. This is justice. This is what happens when you hunt humans. We don't fight fair. We don't follow your rules. We use every advantage, every tool, every bit of knowledge. We adapt, we overcome, we survive. Another call closer. Something was moving through the underbrush with heavy, purposeful steps. You wanted a hunt? Iris said, backing away toward a crystal tree. Here it is, last hunt. Final chance. Try to survive the next hour. If you do, if you can make it to the clearing 3 kilometers east, I'll be waiting. We'll settle this properly, blade to blade, and if I don't survive? Iris smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Then the forest claims another trophy. Either way, the Voran hunting circle ends today. She climbed the crystal tree with practiced ease, moving into the canopy. Within seconds, she was gone, invisible among the branches. Crucian stood, fully mobile now, weapons ready. Around him, the forest came alive with movement. Predators, driven by fire and hunger, converging on his location. He could fight them. He would fight them. He was alpha. He was perfect. But as the first creature emerged from the undergrowth, a 6-legged thing with teeth like knives, he felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 centuries. Real, genuine fear. Not of death, but of failure. Of dying here alone, beaten by a human who had never held a weapon before this month. Of being remembered not as the greatest hunter, but as the fool who underestimated Earth's children. He roared his defiance and charged into battle, blade singing, rifle thundering. The hunt continued. But for the first time, Crucian the Voran Alpha wasn't sure he was the hunter anymore. Crucian emerged from the forest 3 hours later, covered in blood that wasn't all his own. His armor hung in tatters, rent by claws and teeth. His rifle was empty, discarded somewhere in the chaos. But he still carried his blade, and he was still alive. 7 predators had attacked him. 7 native killers of Taros 4, each one apex in its own right. He'd fought them with everything he had, every technique learned across 3 centuries, every trick and skill in desperate gamble. He'd survived barely. The clearing the human had mentioned was exactly where she said it would be. Open ground, flat with good visibility in all directions. Honest terrain for an honest fight, or as honest as anything could be after the hell she'd put him through. Iris Wade stood in the center of the clearing, waiting. She'd cleaned herself somewhat. The dirt was gone, the blood washed away, but the scars remained. Physical ones on her arms and face, mental ones in her eyes which tracked him with the focus of someone who had learned to see death coming. You survived, she said. Not surprised, just stating fact. You doubted I would? He kept his distance, circling, looking for advantage. There was none. This was exactly what she'd promised. Open ground. Fair fight. Fair as anything between them could be. I hoped you would, Iris admitted. The predators killing you would have been convenient. But this matters more. You need to understand what you did. What your hunting circle did. You need to look in the eyes of someone you tried to break and see that she didn't break. She bent, she adapted. She became stronger. You want me to understand? Crucian laughed, bitter. I understand perfectly. You want revenge. Vengeance for your dead friend. For the colonies my circle burned. You think killing me will bring justice? No, Iris said quietly. Killing you won't bring justice. They're still dead. The colonies are still ash. Yuki is still gone. She raised her blade, the one she'd taken from Selt. But killing you will stop you from hurting anyone else, and that's enough. They moved at the same time. Crucian was faster, his enhanced physiology overcoming his injuries through sheer genetic superiority. His blade cut air where her head had been, would have decapitated her if she hadn't twisted aside at the last possible second. But Iris was smarter. She'd spent 3 hours studying recordings of Yashiri blade techniques, watching Selt's moves frame by frame, learning the patterns. She didn't try to match Krushan's speed. She predicted where he would be and struck at empty space that wouldn't be empty. His blade met hers with a sound like thunder. Both fighters staggered back. You learned blade work, Krushan noted, impressed despite himself. From recordings. From observation? From necessity, Iris corrected. She attacked again, and this time her form was better. Still imperfect, still obviously amateur, but functional. Dangerous. They traded blows, moving across the clearing in a deadly dance. Krushan had every advantage. Strength, speed, experience, training. 300 years of combat against Iris's 3 weeks. But she had something he didn't. She had studied this terrain for months. She knew exactly where the solid ground ended and the soft soil began, knew which plants had deep roots and which had shallow ones, knew where the rocks were stable and where they would shift under weight. She led him step by step, fighting and retreating, bleeding from a dozen cuts but always moving, always thinking, always adapting. Krushan realized her strategy too late. His foot came down on soft soil exactly where she'd led him. Not a trap, just terrain. But it shifted just enough, just for a moment. A moment was enough. Iris's blade cut through his damaged armor and into his side. Not deep, not fatal, but enough to slow him. Enough to level the fight just a little bit more. They separated, both breathing hard, both wounded. You fight like a human, Krushan said, and there was no insult in his tone. Just observation. Maybe even respect. Not with honor or glory. With practicality. With adaptation. We fight to win, Iris said. We fight to survive. We fight to protect what we love. She adjusted her grip, and he saw her shoulder trembling, exhausted, running on nothing but willpower. You fought for sport, for trophies, for reputation. And that makes you better? No, Iris shook her head. It makes me more dangerous, because I'll do anything to stop you, anything to make sure you never hurt another human. I'll sacrifice honor, glory, even my own life if I have to. Can you say the same? Krushan considered the question. In 300 years, he'd never had to. He'd always won, always survived, always moved on to the next hunt, the next trophy, the next proof of his superiority. But here now, facing this broken, exhausted human who refused to quit, he understood something fundamental. He'd been hunting for the wrong reasons. The glory, the reputation, the legacy, all of it was ego, pride, vanity. She hunted for something bigger than herself, for justice, for protection, for love of people she would never meet but felt responsible for anyway. That made her stronger than any enhancement, any training, any genetic advantage. I can't, he admitted. I would not sacrifice myself. I hunt for glory, for proof of my worth. Then you've already lost. They came together one last time. Blade against blade, warrior against warrior, philosophy against philosophy. Krushan fought with every technique he knew, every trick refined across centuries. He cut her arm, broke her ribs with a pommel strike, drew blood from a dozen wounds, but Iris fought with something he couldn't match. She fought with the memory of Yuki's last words, with the faces of people in 17 colonies who deserved better, with the knowledge that if she fell, this monster would continue killing, would find more prey, would never stop until someone stopped him. She fought with purpose. And purpose, it turned out, was stronger than perfection. The killing blow came not from skill but from will. Krushan's blade went high, a perfect strike that should have ended the fight. Iris didn't block. She charged inside his reach, accepting the cut across her back, and drove Celt's blade up under his damaged armor, through muscle and organ, into his primary heart. They stood locked together for a long moment. His blade had cut deep, maybe fatally, but hers had pierced true. How? Krushan whispered, blood on his lips. You should not have won. I am superior. I am perfect. You were alone, Iris said, holding him as he died. I fight for everyone you hurt. Everyone you would have hurt. I'm not alone. I'm never alone. Every human who ever lived, who ever will live, stands with me. Can you say the same? Krushan looked into her eyes and saw the truth. She was already dead, or close enough. The wound on her back was too deep, too wide. She would bleed out within minutes. But she'd won. She'd stopped him. Stopped the hunting circle. Stopped the killing. You humans, he whispered, his voice fading. You're more than we thought. More than we understood. Yes, Iris agreed. We are, Krushan fell. The last hunter. The Alpha. Perfect in every way except the one that mattered. Iris stood over his body for 10 seconds, watching the light fade from his eyes. Then her legs gave out and she collapsed beside him, her own blood mixing with his on the grass. She'd done it. Stopped them all. 10 hunters. 10 predators who thought humans were prey. Now they knew better. Now the galaxy would know. Humans protected their own. Humans fought back. Humans won even when winning meant dying. Iris closed her eyes, expecting death. But death didn't come. Not yet. Instead, she heard engines. The sound of a ship approaching. Human design. Rescue beacon must have triggered when she fell. They'd found her. She wanted to laugh. Of course they did. Humans always found each other. Always came back for their people. That's what made them strong. Medics swarmed around her, speaking in rapid voices. She heard words like critical condition and massive blood loss and emergency surgery. Felt herself being lifted, carried, secured. She opened her eyes one last time and saw them arranging the skulls. All 10 of them, collected and documented, evidence, proof, justice, Yuki. She whispered to the medic holding her hand. Tell them about Yuki Tanaka. She warned me. She saved me. We'll tell them, the medic promised. We'll tell everyone. You're a hero. No, Iris said as darkness took her. Just human. The rescue ship lifted off, carrying the survivor and the evidence. Below, the red forest of Taros 4 continued its ancient patterns, uncaring of the drama that had played out in its shadows. But the galaxy would care. The galaxy would remember. The Voron hunting circle had learned what happened when you hunted humans. You became the prey. 2 months after the battle on Taros 4, Iris Wade woke up in a hospital bed on Earth. She'd been unconscious for most of that time, floating in medical suspension, while doctors worked to repair the damage. 17 major surgeries, enough synthetic tissue to build a new person. Scars that would never fully fade, but she was alive. Against all odds, all probability, all reasonable expectation, she was alive. The room was full of flowers. Hundreds of them from people she'd never met. Cards covered every available surface. Get well messages in a dozen languages. Children's drawings showing stick figures fighting monsters. Thank you notes from colonists in the Outer Rim. A woman sat beside her bed reading through some of the cards. She looked up when Iris moved and her face broke into a relieved smile. You're awake, she said. Finally. I've been here 3 days waiting. Who are you? Iris's voice came out as a croak rough from disuse. Captain Lisa Ortiz. Colonial Defense Force. I'm assigned to investigate the Voron hunting circle. She poured water into a cup and helped Iris drink, though I guess there's not much left to investigate. You did pretty thorough work. The skulls, Iris said. Did they? 10 confirmed kills. All documented, all verified. Lisa's smile faded. The evidence you gathered shut down the entire operation. We've arrested 17 associates, frozen their assets, liberated 36 species being held for sport. You saved a lot of lives. Couldn't save Yuki. No, Lisa agreed gently, but you made sure her death mattered. Made sure her warning wasn't wasted. There's a memorial being built, you know, for all the victims. Her name is first. Iris closed her eyes, feeling tears she'd been holding for months finally break free. Tell me about it. Tell me everything. Over the next hour, Lisa explained what had happened after the rescue. The Galactic Council had launched a full investigation into the Voron hunting circle. What they found was worse than anyone expected. Not 17 colonies destroyed, 37, across 6 species including humans. Thousands of deaths, hundreds of beings held in captivity, tortured for entertainment. The evidence Iris had broadcast combined with data recovered from Crucian's ship had been enough to bring down the entire network. The Voron species had disavowed the hunting circle, calling them criminals and outcasts. Reparations were being negotiated. Justice was slow, but it was happening. You started something, Lisa said. People are calling you the Hunter's Bane, the Predator Killer. There are songs about you in 3 different languages. I just wanted to survive, Iris said. Just wanted them to stop. You did more than that. You showed the galaxy what humans are capable of when we're pushed, when we fight for something bigger than ourselves. Lisa leaned forward. The Colonial Defense Force wants to recruit you. Train you properly. Give you resources to hunt down the others who escaped. Others? The hunting circle had associates. People who funded them, bought their trophies, participated in the hunts. Most ran when the investigation started. We need someone who understands how they think, how they hunt. Iris thought about it. About spending her life chasing monsters across the galaxy. About more violence, more blood, more death. She'd become a killer out of necessity. Did she want to make it permanent? Then she thought about the children's drawings on her wall. About colonists who could sleep safely because 10 hunters would never hurt anyone again. About Yuki, who deserved better than to be forgotten. "I'll do it," she said, "but on one condition. Name it. Every person we save, every victim we recover, every monster we stop. We document it. We share it. We make sure the galaxy knows exactly what happens when you hurt humans, when you threaten our families, our friends, our colonies." Iris met Lisa's eyes with an intensity that made the captain sit back. "We make them afraid, not of our weapons or our ships, of us, of what we become when we have to protect our own." Lisa smiled slowly. "I think that can be arranged." Over the next 6 months, Iris recovered enough to begin training. Proper combat instruction, not improvised survival. Weapons handling, tactics, strategy. She was a mediocre student in most areas. Her instructors noted that she relied too much on improvisation, on terrain, on unconventional approaches, but they also noted that she won. Every scenario, every simulation, every test, she won because she didn't care about looking good or following doctrine. She cared about stopping the threat by any means necessary. She became the Colonial Defense Force's first specialist hunter, a new position, created specifically for tracking down war criminals and slavers who preyed on human colonies. She was given a small ship, a dedicated crew, and one simple mission: find them and stop them. Over the next 5 years, she stopped 37 operations, freed hundreds of captives, brought down criminal networks that had operated for decades. She became a legend in the Outer Rim, a ghost story that slavers told to scare each other. The woman who turned the hunters into the hunted, the predator killer, the defender. But she never forgot where it started. Every year on the anniversary of Yuki's death, Iris returned to Taros 4, to the Red Forests where she'd learned to fight, to the research station where her friend had died warning her. She'd built a memorial there. Simple stone with names carved into the surface. Yuki Tanaka at the top. Below that, the names of every victim from the 17 colonies the hunting circle had destroyed. Thousands of names taking up hundreds of square meters. At the bottom, a single line in English and Galactic Standard: "We remember. We fight back, we win." On the 10th anniversary, she wasn't alone. Other survivors came. People she'd saved, families she'd protected, colonists who owed their lives to her actions. They held a ceremony, simple and quiet. Flowers were placed. Names were read. Tears were shed. An old man approached her as the ceremony ended. He was Yashiri, elderly by his species standards, with scales that had faded to silver with age. "My son died on Taros 4, he said in accented English. Selt was his name. He was a blade master, a warrior." Iris tensed, hand moving instinctively toward her weapon. But the old man raised his hands in peace. "I do not blame you," he said quickly. Selt chose his path. He knew the risks. He died as a warrior, facing a worthy opponent. That is all any of us can ask. He paused, ancient eyes studying her face. "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" Iris couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "I killed your son. You stopped him from killing others, from bringing shame to our family, to our people. The hunting circle was an abomination. My son was lost to it, but you freed him at the end. You gave him an honorable death." The old man bowed, a gesture of deep respect in his culture. "You did what I could not. You stopped the hunting. You brought justice." He left a flower at the memorial, then walked away without another word. Iris stood there for a long time, staring at the flower, a Yashiri morning bloom, traditionally placed for warriors who died with honor. She didn't know how to feel about that. Didn't know if she could accept that any of the hunters deserved honor. But maybe that was the point. Maybe justice wasn't about revenge or hatred. Maybe it was about stopping the hurt, preventing future victims, making sure the cycle ended. She'd killed 10 hunters on Taros 4, stopped 37 operations since then, freed hundreds of people from slavery and death. But the work wasn't done. Would never be done. There were always more predators, more threats, more monsters who thought humans were easy prey. And there would always be people like her. Humans who refused to be victims, who fought back with everything they had, who adapted and overcame and survived no matter the cost. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Don't hunt humans. Don't threaten their families. Don't think they're weak just because they're kind, because kindness is a choice. And when humans choose to stop being kind, when they choose to fight, to hunt, to kill, they're very, very good at it. Iris Wade touched Yuki's name on the memorial one last time. I'm still fighting, she whispered. Still protecting them. Still making sure your warning wasn't wasted. The red forest whispered back. Wind through crystal trees, carrying her words into the sky, carrying them across the galaxy where they became legend, became warning, became truth. The hunt was over. The predators had learned. Humans were not prey. They were something far more dangerous. They were protectors. They were avengers. They were the last thing you saw when you made the mistake of hurting someone they loved. They were human. And that was enough. 10 skulls sat in a museum on Earth now, behind glass, with a simple plaque explaining their story. School children visited to learn about the Voron hunting circle, about the 17 colonies, about Dr. Iris Wade and her assistant Yuki Tanaka, about the day humanity showed the galaxy what humans really were, not warriors by nature, not killers by choice, not predators by design, but absolutely, completely, utterly unstoppable when protecting their own. The exhibit's title said it all. 10 predators hunted 1 human. She sent their skulls back as reply. And beneath that, in smaller letters, Earth remembers. Earth protects. Earth wins. The hunt was over. The predators were dead. The prey had won. That was the story. That was the warning. That was the truth the galaxy would never forget. Don't hunt humans. You'll regret it. If you're lucky, you'll live long enough to regret it. If you're not lucky, you'll become another skull in another memorial, another warning to others who think humans are weak. Another lesson in why you never ever mistake kindness for weakness. Another proof that humans, when pushed, push back harder. The end of the Voron hunting circle. The beginning of a new understanding. The moment the galaxy learned to respect humanity, not for their technology or their numbers, but for their determination, their adaptability, their absolute refusal to give up or give in. 10 hunters learned that lesson the hard way. The galaxy learned it from their example. And humanity? Humanity just kept being what they'd always been. Survivors, protectors, warriors when they had to be. Human. And that, as it turned out, was more than enough.